All right, here you go. Aidan Hutchinson, Michigan, edge rusher. I mean, when it opened, okay, plus 160, you know, like somewhere in that 30 to 40% chance he's the number one pick. And then, hey, on March 7th, wow. I mean, we're talking about like less than 15% chance he's the number one overall pick. Became the favorite the next day. Why? Because the Jags plays the franchise tag on Cam Robinson, which essentially, to at least the betting public, signaled they were not going offensive line, they were going defense, and he's the preeminent defensive player. And now, that's minus 300. That means you got to lay $3 to win a buck. He has a 75% chance to be the number one overall selection at present. 100% chance B-Mac is our guy, smiling. Love having him on. Two-time Super Bowl champion, Bryant McFadden. So Aidan Hutchinson has the best odds to be the number one overall pick. He's at minus 300. If you and I were the general manager of the Jags, or you're the general manager, I'm your assistant, and you walk into my office, hand me a Fresca and say, I've made the decision, would he be our pick?
Nah, not necessarily. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars defensively, right, the scheme, the mentality, right now, base-wise, they're at 314. And I understand when you look at defenses in the National Football League, they're more in sub packages than they are in base. But if they go to their sub package, which is a nickel or a dime type of coverage standpoint, I mean, your edge rushers are Josh Allen and Chason, right? So now if you draft Aidan Hutchinson, the likelihood of him being a dominant edge rusher is not likely because you already have those guys in place when it comes to the personnel. So will he be as dominant in the interior of the defensive line? I don't know, because when you watch him at Michigan, EK, we see him causing a lot of terror doing what? Rushing from the edge. He is an elite-like edge rusher, but can he provide the same production at the 3 technique with his hand in the dirt playing in the interior as a defensive tackle? I don't know. So personnel-wise, will it make sense? I'm not sure. Athletically, he's gifted. He can do a lot. But for him to be the best player that he could potentially be in the National Football League, I would prefer him to go to a scheme that can utilize him similar to what the Michigan Wolverines did throughout his collegiate career.
Thank God you said that, because when people talk, they don't necessarily think about scheme and fit. They're just like, oh, well, he's the guy I know the best, or he's the best at this position. We need edge, he's edge. Yeah, but you need a certain type of edge, right? And then maybe a certain type of offensive lineman, or a certain type of wide receiver where you may need somebody who can play the slot, or you may need a big guy or someone to take the top off. You know, there's a big difference between Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill, even though they're great in their own way. So I'm glad you said that and explained the why in that spot. All right, now, you were a guy who played in the secondary and won Super Bowls. You know this position. Who's your top cornerback prospect and why?
Derek Stingley Jr. And why he is my top cornerback prospect. Number one, he's healthy. But number two, he provides the element of fear to quarterbacks because he takes the ball away. EK, we watch football every Sunday, and we highlight and we oftentimes talk about the guys who can get sacks defensively and do what? Create turnovers.
Yep.
That's who Derek Stingley is. His one healthy year at LSU, which was his freshman season, 6 interceptions, 15 PBUs. Quarterbacks do not want to target a guy that can take the ball away. And he has that element. He's one of the best ball hawking corners that's available in this draft. And all he did was just solidify how freakish of an athlete he is from what he did at his pro day. Number one, he showed that he was healthy. Number two, he showed that he was still fast, and he has the natural instincts that a cornerback should have. And when you factor all of that into the equation, he is my top cornerback prospect.
So why did he fall? Why is he falling? I mean, this was a guy that he had come out earlier. He'd been a top 5 overall pick. Now he's not even projected as the number one corner in some things. People like kid in Cincinnati, you may know that kind of thing. And you mentioned it. I think that a GM would know that he maybe wasn't playing at 100%, and they say, well, he didn't have any interceptions because nobody wanted to throw it at him. I mean, this is the one position where not having stats may actually mean a good thing because it means no one's throwing at you. So why isn't everybody seeing what you just said?
Maybe it's the Liz Frank injury that he sustained throughout the year, but clearly he just showed a week ago that he's healthy. Maybe it's just a bit of a few teams playing chicken, right? They're saying, well, he's falling. He's not top on our list. He's not the top cornerback on our board. But in the reality terms of things, he is number one. He should be number one. Think about this, EK. When you look at the cornerbacks that are available, name me another corner that just within his team alone saw guys like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. I mean, then you look at what he saw in the SEC. I mean, some of the prolific guys that we're seeing on Sundays at Alabama, he went against. I mean, this is a guy who has been battle tested, and he stood firm against those said tests. So me personally, whatever they're saying, it doesn't make any sense to me, because the eye test tells me, even when I take off my nice glasses, that guy is the number one cornerback prospect, and he should be the first corner to come off the board.
Can you take me a little inside baseball, as they say? Like, will they ask Jamar Chase, for example, will they say, hey, you saw this guy in practice, how good is he really? Or will they ask the Alabama receivers that may be on their roster, hey, you played against him, you saw 4 quarters, how good is he really? Or does that not happen?
Oh, it happens all the time.
Because if I was a general manager, that's the first thing I would do. I'd be asking everybody. Yes.
I'm talking to any player that has lined up across from Derek Stingley or any player that played with him. I talked to one of my coaching buddies that's currently coaching the National Football League, and he was actually at his pro day, and he coaches in the secondary. I won't say the team, but he coaches in the secondary. And he said, B-Mac, number one, if he was available to come out after his freshman season, he would have been the first corner to come off the board. Number two, he should not pass the top 10. That's a given. He is the most ball-ready corner in the National Football League. He said it seems like when he was born to backpedal. It's a natural thing for him.
Well done and well said. Listen, I'm a big believer, the way you get information in this life, ask different people who don't know each other, and if they're saying the same thing, that's a pretty good indication of what's happening. So if you get people who know each other all saying, I think he's a little overrated, I think this guy's a little underrated, this guy's good, but he's a pain, this guy, he gets a bad rap, but he's actually a good dude. That's how I learn, and that's I think I would do if I were a GM, and you can do that in this case, and I'm surprised he's falling, but it's a good point by you. This may be a little smoke screening, and everybody be trying to talk everybody else into letting him fall. All right, now let's get to the quarterbacks. Last year, we had 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15 overall picks, right? 5 of the top 15. This year, I don't know when the first guy's going to go. I don't even know who the first guy's going to be. Who's your top quarterback? Let's start with that, and then I'll follow up.
My top quarterback is Malik Willis, and here's why. I think he has a higher upside than the other quarterbacks that he's competing with when it comes to draft spots. I think athletically, he's a gifted guy, and he's a well-liked individual as well, a high-character guy. I'm not saying the other players are not high-character guys, but it's something about Malik Willis, it makes you want to gravitate to him. It makes you want to be around him. And that is very, very significant when you're playing a leadership position like the quarterback spot. You have to be able to lead. Guys have to want to follow you. And he has that same skill set when it comes to the maturity side of things and just being a great guy. Not to mention, when I look at Malik Willis, the guy he reminds me a lot of. It was one of my favorite quarterbacks in the National Football League, and he has some curly hair. Curly hair Russell Wilson. He might not blow you away, EK, with the measurables. He's not going to be 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", but he has the it factor. And that's something that can't be coached and it can't be learned. Either you have it or you don't have it. And he has that it factor. And I do believe, and I love Kenny Pickett. I think he had an extraordinary collegiate campaign, especially a year ago. But it's something about Malik Willis. When I look at where he could be in 6-7 years, I think he could be a better player than the other quarterbacks. And because of that, he is my top quarterback prospect.
All right, but now I'm really going to put you on the spot, right? How does he measure up compared to, say, last year's class, right? He may be the best of this class, but ultimately it's not about is he the best of this class. It's is he the best among the 32 guys who will start for the 32 teams on a Sunday. So if he were in last year's draft, where would you have Malik Willis? If I were the Patriots and I called you and I said, I'll give you Mac Jones, you give me Malik Willis, or I'll give you Justin Fields, you give me Malik Willis, would he be the 6th quarterback in last year's class?
That's a good question. I wasn't that high on Trey Lance because I didn't see a lot of football from Trey Lance. And Trey Lance eventually became the number 2 overall selection. Mac Jones, I'm more comfortable with Mac Jones. Trey Lance was 3rd, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Mac Jones, more comfortable with Mac Jones being drafted before Malik Willis. Justin Fields, I'm more comfortable as well. So I will put him probably behind a guy like Justin Fields. But I can tell you this much, his game is similar to Justin Fields as well. And I think when you look at the arm strength, that is something that he is going to wow a lot of people with, that skill set, and just being smart with the football. So I wouldn't say he would be in the cream of the crop if you look at last year's passers, but in this edition, that's the most important thing that matters. And we all do agree. We all would say the same thing. This is not a heavily saturated group of guys at the quarterback position. It's not as deep. And because of that, he should be the most wanted quarterback that will be available.
One thing I looked up and didn't realize, you realize Malik Willis is older than Trey Lance? Trey Lance is younger than Kenny Pickett. He's younger than Malik Willis. He's younger than Matt Corral. I mean, Trey Lance is still a child, and he has already played a year. So it's almost like he's almost like the behind the curtain. You know, you don't know really what you're going to get versus this. I have no idea what Trey Lance could be. That would be the guy. I mean, Malik Willis or Trey Lance right now, I don't know. Whatever you say, that's good enough for me. Now, let's get to the wide receivers. You got to cover these guys. And again, different types of wide receivers. Who is your top wide receiver, and what type of wide receiver is he?
Drake London is my top wide receiver. When I watch Drake London play, if he wore number 13, I would have thought I'm looking at Mike Evans. He reminds me so much of Mike Evans. And it's a beautiful thing for him because we know what type of elite wide receiver Mike Evans is. The reason why Drake London is my wide receiver, 1, he has the measurables. Number 2, he's a strong catcher of the football. Look at it right there. Anytime the ball gets close to number 15, he's not allowing the football to get to his chest. He always goes up and catches it with his strong hands. That is a unique skill set. And because of that, as a defender, you don't ever get an opportunity to come up with PBUs. Look at the highlights. Every highlight is based on what I just said. He is a strong catcher of the football. Number 2, he played the X for USC, but he also lined up in the slot.
When you say the X, for people who don't know, tell me what that means.
Okay, the X wide receiver is basically the offense's number 1 guy. He is the number 1 guy. He is the guy that lines up to the weak side of the formation. When you look at the Z is the guy that lines up to the strength of the formation. But the X is oftentimes by himself. If you have a trip formation where you have 3 pass catchers on one side, guess what? The best guy is usually backside where he can do a lot of damage in a one-on-one opportunity. And that's who Drake London was for SC. But get this though, EK, oftentimes when you see wide receivers that play on Saturday in college football, when they're considered the X, they don't move them around a lot. He's a guy who's 6'3", 6'4". He lined up at the X, but he also lined up at the slot. He has enough wiggle to create separation in between the numbers. So the versatility is there along with the measurables, as I said. But the main reason why he's my number 1, he catches the football so strong. His hands are so strong. Every highlight that you see a reception coming to Drake London, he is catching the ball away from his body. That's an impressive trait to have.
Very smart. You're always making a smart what you say. Now it's time to get bold. Geico, 15-second statement from Bryant McFadden. Floor is yours.
My bold prediction for this year's draft, Malik Willis will go 2.
Wow.
He will be the 2nd overall player to get drafted. Will it be the Detroit Lions? We don't know. It could be a team that decides to trade up to get Mr. Malik Willis. I don't know, but I can tell you this much. He will be the 2nd player to get drafted in this year's NFL draft.
What you talking about, Willis? You don't remember that. That was different strokes.
Yes, I do.
When I was a little kid, get home from school sick, that was always one that I liked, and that was the catchphrase there. Well done, BMAC. You know, you're smart. You should be a coach. Oh, wait, you were. BMAC coaching at Florida State in the spring game. Look at this. I can't wait. I mean, I understand. Apparently, we have footage of this. Look at this. It's beautiful.
Hey, EK, the good part about that, clearly my team won. The bad part, I had to wait to get to the hotel to change clothes. And it was a little chilly outside. It was around in the 50s. And when you have that cold Powerade just on your back and on my pants, man, I was damp. But it was a great experience. And get this too, EK, the next time you work with Danny Cannell, he was coaching the other side. They took a fat loss. Danny Cannell and Peter Boerwer, they got fired on their first day of coaching.
All I know,
football.
Danny Cannell said that Pittsburgh Steeler BMAC would have been quick enough to avoid the Gatorade, and that head coach Brian McFadden could not avoid the Gatorade. But guess what? You got the Gatorade because your team won. Well done. There he is.
Hey, EK, we at Florida State and Tallahassee, we don't say Gatorade. We only drink Powerade. And you know the backstory with
Of course, yes. Gatorade is developed for the University of Florida by a University of Florida professor. I get it. Sure, fair enough. He's coming. It was originally in a glass bottle, too. Full-on glass bottle. It was only one flavor back in the day. Okay, this has been the old folks reunion. But anyway, BMAC getting it done. Excellent job. And speaking of, you want a great podcast? BMAC, Patrick Peterson. They're cousins. They know each other. You can say things to a family member that you can't say to just a friend. And they say it, and they do it very well. You download, you follow, you enjoy.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.